And we are now recording.
Okay, welcome everyone to the regular Thursday meeting of the Hudson Rotary Club on, it's May 14th. So we're halfway through May already. We will start this week with an invocation from Andrea.
Hello everyone. Glad you could join us this morning. I'd like to start today with just my daily devotion, and I thought it was a good reminder to where we're at. So I'm just going to read it from the book that I usually use. I am a mighty God. Nothing is too difficult for me. I have chosen to use weak ones like you to accomplish my purposes. Your weakness is designed to open you up to my power. Therefore, do not fear your limitations or measure the day's demands against your strength. What I require of you is to stay connected to me, living in trusting dependence on my limitless resources. When you face unexpected demands, there is no need to panic. Remember that I am with you, talk with me, and listen while I talk you through each challenging situation. I am not a careless God. When I allow difficulties to come into your life, I equip you fully to handle them. Relax in my presence, trusting in my strength. For nothing is impossible with God. That being said, Lord, we ask that you bring this group together to recognize the strength that we have combined within each of us and what we can give back in your glory. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
And thank you, Andrea.
Mm-hmm.
And if you would, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And as Rotarians, in the things that we think, say, and do, is it the truth? Is it concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And Randy, I will turn it over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. We are looking for Happy Bucks. Our guests will be introduced a little later. Anybody happy?
Your pie.
Yeah.
No? Mary?
I'll do it for him. He made a rhubarb cream pie, first of the season, yesterday.
Wow.
And I tortured my sisters with it by putting a picture of it on Facebook so that, because they can't have any.
Nice. Yeah, Denny, you're on mute. There you go.
There we go. So
you're on mute again.
here we go. Try that.
Now talk.
Okay. I'm happy because Ross's crew made me an apple pie over at Perkins.
Nice. The old buck, Ross.
Okay. Put it in my account.
Hey, with all the profit, huh?
Yeah, that was my profit. That's for sure.
Yeah. Any other happy bucks?
I have one.
Go ahead, Brian.
I'm happy that I think I was reflecting today. I think it's been like one of the best springs in a long time in several ways. It started early with milder temperatures. It hasn't gotten super hot, and I still haven't mowed my lawn yet.
There you go.
Which is cool. Usually it would have been at least one time by now. Not that I detest mowing the lawn, but you know, it's kind of a pain in the ass. So I'm happy.
We should talk about that. It sounds like you have a psychological issue.
We all do, don't we?
Yeah. Any other happy bucks? Yes, sir, doctor.
So happy for a lot of things. One, we've continued to stay busier, and it feels like busier than ever, but it's really just because we've had to space things out to be safe from a schedule standpoint. So super busy and happy for that. But I have a happy buck for baseball, even though my son's summer baseball is canceled. He and some of his baseball buddies decided to build a wiffle ball diamond in our yard. So we have the home run fence and foul poles and backstop, and we've got some kids having fun. Now they're talking about a wiffle ball league in my yard, which makes me happy. My wife may not be so happy about that. But also my third happy buck, so I owe somebody $3, is because there is no baseball, I now have 3 boundary water trips on the schedule for the summer. 2 of them with my son and 1 of them with some friends. So I don't know if I can make them all happen or not, but it's something to look forward to anyway, for sure.
Very nice.
Great.
Any other happy bucks? Anybody thinking? Yes, Andrea.
So I just want to say that I agree with you, Brian, that it has been, in a weird way, a good spring. It certainly had its challenges as we're all facing them together. But I'm always eternally looking for the good in it, and certainly there's been a lot of good that has happened due to the COVID-19 virus. And not to belittle the challenges that so many are facing, but I have enjoyed having some additional home time with my family and getting to know my kids on a different level, being that they can't go out with friends and socialize the way they normally do. They're stuck with mom and dad. So there's been a lot of board games and puzzles coming out of that, which has helped adhere and have some family bonding time. I also just want to mention, I've been in a lot of conversations with community leaders, and it's been so rewarding to be able to participate in some of the conversations that I think in the long term are going to have some positive effects on our communities. A lot of communication happening that perhaps wasn't there before. So that's my happy for today.
All right, thank you. Any others? Okay, I just wanted to mention that it's Connie's 5th anniversary in Rotary, Shelley's 18th, and Joel's 18th. So congrats, Joel.
Wow, congrats. Very good.
Yeah. Any announcements today? No? Isaac, Rotary Minute. You're on mute. Nice facilitator.
All right. Well, I'm just following from Denny's playbook here, muting myself and then forgetting about that. So this month is the month that we celebrate Interact and Rotaract. And I wanted to mention earlier this year, I had mentioned the Toastmasters and Rotary Alliance, and that programs were at that point just being fleshed out. There have been two learning sessions on the topic that have been released up to this point. I think most of us as Rotarian members have gotten a notice about that. They will be releasing 6 more through the end of the year, but at this point, if you're interested in learning more about that Rotary Toastmasters Alliance, they've already sent out 2 webinar recordings about that. So that is the latest on that topic, and that is my Rotary Minute.
Thank you, sir. I'll hand it off back to you to introduce our guest today.
So our guest speaker today is Kris Poston, the recycling specialist for St. Croix County. Kris has over 20 years of experience in marketing, setting up corporate recycling programs and working with manufacturers to reduce their packaging. She has designed campaigns to educate and engage employees in new recycling practices and acted as a resource for many of their questions. After raising her family in St. Paul, Kris moved to Hudson in 2014. She is passionate about working on her historic house, gardening, and exploring on her motorcycle. Wandering the scenic back roads of western Wisconsin and sampling the small towns is one of the things that drew her to our beautiful county. With an intense passion for the environment, Kris is happy for the opportunity to speak with us today. The presentation will cover the recycling program in St. Croix County, how to recycle right, ways to recycle, and what happens to my recycling. Here to share more is Kris Poston.
Thanks so much, Isaac. Can everyone hear me okay?
You bet.
All right. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to your group and get in front of all of y'all. I know this is a little unusual, so please bear with me if for some reason things aren't coming through properly. I do have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to be working from, so I'll share my screen, and feel free to, probably best to hold questions to the end because sometimes they get answered as we go through the presentation. So let me figure out how to share my screen here.
So Kris, down in the bottom center of your window, there's a green share screen button.
Oh, okay, I think I have it.
And there it is.
There we go. Okay. So as Isaac said, I am the recycling specialist with St. Croix County. I just celebrated my 1-year anniversary, so I'm still relatively new to the position and have so much to learn, but my inner hippie is very happy about being in this position. I love it. First, we're gonna talk, let's see, there we go. We're gonna talk about why we need to recycle and reduce waste, especially during these times with COVID. The businesses that use recycled materials are really struggling to get enough material to keep their businesses running. So residential is very important, since so many businesses that used to provide those materials are either shut down or working at a lower capacity. So we're really asking residents to be very conscientious about their recycling efforts and to do their best to support this. Recycling obviously is a great resource. It reduces the impact on our planet for having to create those virgin materials. It protects our public health and environment. It has a great economic impact, and in many cases it does reduce costs. Of course, our markets have been flat for the last few years, but things are certainly being shaken up right now in the current situation. Unfortunately, Americans are one of the biggest waste generators in the world. Europeans have a very effective system for managing all of their recyclables and reducing their waste. But we estimate that 75% of American waste is recyclable, but only about 30% of it actually makes it into the recycling system. Many people are not aware that recycling is not an option. It's actually the law in Wisconsin, and this applies not only to residents, but businesses and other organizations. The items that are listed on this slide are the basic items that are required by law, but of course there are other items that can be recycled as well. And I'll go through all of these things a little bit later on in the presentation. So St. Croix County, in comparison to the state, is not really a rock star when it comes to recycling. We have room for improvement when we look at the amount of recycling that is provided per person in the county. To how to recycle, there's some steps that we always want to consider before we get there. We want to rethink, we want to reduce, reuse or repurpose, and repair before we actually get to recycling. So in these current times, it's even more imperative that we think about Depression era when many things are not readily available. So that's one silver lining that's actually coming out of this situation, is that people are reusing their products and their items longer and repairing them and so forth. So when we rethink, a good example of this is considering your purchases. For 2-3 years in a row, I was going through a DVD player once a year. They kept breaking down. And then I would have to pay a disposal fee to recycle them. So instead of just buying the cheapest DVD player that's on the shelf, I have finally invested a little more money in something that's better quality so that that lifespan of the product is a little bit longer. Many items, especially electronics, we need to consider how they're going to be disposed of. This also applies to cleaning products and just many things that might be hazardous waste and how we're going to get rid of those things. So we need to think before we purchase. The next thing is to reduce. We often buy products that, for some reason, packaging is really an issue with manufacturers. They overpackage and they use so much material and use up a lot of raw materials. So if you have similar products side by side and you're just wondering which one to choose, take a look at the packaging and see which one is a little bit simpler and a little more economically responsible. Also, buying in bulk is a simple way to reduce packaging. And I'm a big proponent of donating it. And I have many, many phone calls of, oh, what should I do with this? And I said, put a free sign out on your front curb and see if someone can use it. Someone wanted to recycle a dock the other week, but they got rid of it in a matter of hours. Many charities, I know right now the situation is not available, but generally charity donations are a great way to keep things usable and keep them out of the landfills. I also want people to consider closing that loop, that not only you donate, but look on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace and go to Goodwill and things like that to purchase items that can have a second life. And then try and buy reusable over disposable items. A lot of this revolves around food packaging, put things in reusable containers versus Ziploc bags. When I eat out, I don't use a straw and I actually bring my own reusable container for leftovers so I don't get stuck with one of the styrofoam ones. Maintaining and repairing your products is an obvious one. Just regular maintenance on things, giving facelifts to your furniture with new hardware, upholstery, paint, things like that, are all ways to extend things and keep them out of the landfill. So we're going to next move on to recycling right. And the number one issue that the industry faces is contamination. By keeping the recycling stream clean, it ensures that everything that's collected from our curbside bins actually makes it to the manufacturers that are going to use these items. I try and get people to think that when you put it in your curbside bin, that there are no little Keebler elves on the other end that are washing things out and cleaning them up. We need to make sure that when they go in there, that once they get to the recycling facility, that they're readily sortable. So keeping it clean, because just that one bad apple can force not only your container, but everything else that is put in with your container to go to the landfill. Wish cycling is a term that we use where many people feel like, oh, I know this can be recycled, but they're not really sure the proper way to do it. Or they think there's a component in this that can be recycled. So I will use an example of this. I have a battery charger that I use for my motorcycle and it blew up. A friend of mine said, oh, I'll take a look at it for you. So I went over there, he took it apart and said, no, gosh, I can't fix this for you, but I'll recycle it for you. And he went over to the curbside bin and dumped this battery charger in there. So I said, you've got great instinct. It should be recycled, but this is not the proper method. So that's what wish cycling is. Yeah, people having an instinct, but not really having the right education on what to do with it. So when those items end up in those recycling bins, again, everything gets diverted over to the landfill. So we just need to make sure that we understand what the right way is to recycle. A big struggle with this, or something that's very confusing, are the plastic bags and film. So these plastic bags and film, when they get to a recycling center, based on the type of equipment they have, it gets all tangled up in there, will shut down the equipment, it damages the equipment, then workers have to get in there, put themselves at risk, cutting all of this out. So we're trying very hard to educate people not to put these types of plastic bags and film in with their curbside recycling. However, they can be recycled. Now, these are the stretchy kinds of plastics, the grocery bags, the Ziploc bags, the film around your paper towels and toilet paper and things like that. It can be bubble wrap, dry cleaning bags. If it's stretchy, that's the right type of plastic that can be recycled. But you need to gather those separately and then bring them into your local grocery store, Target, or Walmart. However, at the moment, they are not accepting those. So I'm just asking people to store those in your garage or basement until that is available again. So some common mistakes that people make when putting things in the recycling bin. The biggest one that I'm coming across, especially at my family get-togethers, are people putting used paper plates, the cups, the napkins, tissues, paper towels, all those sorts of things in recycling. There's a difference between organics and recycling. So all of those paper products can go into a compost bin. Some townships within the county have like an organic resource. So those things need to stay out of recycling and either go into trash or your backyard compost. That holds true with the plastic forks, knives, and plates. Those all go into the trash. The single-use coffee packets are kind of confusing because there are elements within there that could be recycled if you could pick them all apart. But the most efficient way to do that is like Keurig has a mail back program, and I know they're working on a recyclable pod right now as well. Then I'm going to go to the takeout containers, the pizza boxes, styrofoam, all those things, anything with a wax coating, that all needs to go in the trash. And then items that are combined. So think of a pickle jar with a metal lid and a glass base. Just make sure that when you put them in recycling that they're separated, because there's no one taking those things apart at the recycling center. Also, say like a brownie mix or a cake mix, they have a plastic liner that will go in the trash and then put the box itself into recycling. So we're going to talk about what I should actually be recycling. When I was younger, the way that people recycled was actually very different. We had separate containers or bins, one for glass and one for paper and one for metals. So with the single source recycling, the technology and the processes have now changed and evolved. So what used to be best practices, some of those things are no longer true. So we're going to talk about how to prepare your recyclables. First of all, make sure that all liquid and food containers are empty and rinsed out. They do not need to be sparkling clean, but for example, I eat a lot of cottage cheese, so I need to make sure that any food residue in there is out of that container. I actually put the lid back on, and then I put it in my recycling bin. So labels don't have to be removed. And you no longer need to crush cans or plastic bottles. Due to the type of technology that they have, it's actually easier for the equipment to gather the items if they're still intact, bigger pieces. The smaller pieces are very hard for them to separate and grab. And at the end of this, I'll show you how that equipment works. Also put plastic caps back on bottles because again, those small items are difficult to process. So as long as it's similar materials, plastic cap on plastic bottle. Like I said, I do that with a cottage cheese or sour cream, things like that. Also berry containers. Some of our haulers don't accept those. So you have to check with your hauler on the berry containers. Mine does, which is advanced disposal. And I just make sure that the lid is closed so that it won't get so tangled up. Very important thing is when you go to put it in your outside container, some people will collect it in the house in a plastic bag, which is fine. But when you go out to the container, just like the gal in the picture has, no plastic bags. It should all be loose. We already talked a little bit. Can you still see? I keep getting a message that my connection is weak. Are we still good? Okay. So we already talked a little bit about rinsing out containers and cleanliness because there again, the demand is for high quality, clean scrap. We talked about the bottle caps and the size. Rule of thumb is nothing smaller than a credit card because it's difficult for the equipment to actually pick it up. I have a thing about all these Post-it notes that I use at work. So instead of throwing one Post-it note in, I stick them to bigger things and whatnot. It's a little obsessive thing of mine, but in general, things smaller than a credit card, you don't need to worry about. So as I mentioned with the berry containers, always check with your local hauler first or your town's drop-off center to see what's acceptable. We have 8 different haulers in St. Croix County. And outside of the things that are required by law, they have some variations in what they will, what they'll accept. With waste management and advanced disposal, they take the widest range of items. Also, when I am often Googling, you know, is this recyclable, is that not? And if you do that yourself, when you're looking at your resource, you check the date of it because something from 2006 may no longer be pertinent, and also check the location if you can where the information is originating from. California, East Coast and West Coast are far more advanced in their recycling options that they have for residents than what we do. So we're definitely lagging on that. So just be mindful when you do a little research on your recycling. So the thing that people are most aware of is curbside recycling, but that's not the only option. So once we've gone through the initial steps of considering the 5 R's, we then need to figure out which is the correct option for recycling. So the curbside is the easiest in the drop-off centers. The next thing is collection events. Then there are take-back programs and mail-in or reclaim programs. So this is just a reiteration of what we discussed in the first couple slides about what is required by law. So that's aluminum and metal cans. Generally think beverage and food containers. That's always the best way to think about those types of things. Along with the metal lids from jars and cans. This also includes pet food, the little metal containers. Then we're going to go to mixed paper. Paper needs to be clean and dry, otherwise it molds, and then again, the whole bundle has to be thrown away. The used paper products we already talked about. Plastics 1 and 2 are the ones that are most common. Those are your bottles, jugs, jars, and tubs. And then you need to ask your haulers if they take plastics 3 through 7. So we have 3 of our haulers that take them in the county. Glass bottles and jars, the clear brown and green, and then cardboard. Just make sure it's broken down and flattened. We have county collection events. We normally have them in the spring and in the fall, but we've had to cancel our spring ones. So we have a clean sweep household hazardous waste collection. And that one will be held September 24th and 25th this year. Then we have the Appliance, Electronic, and Tire Collection weekend, and that's going to be September 19th. And we'll have more details in our fall newsletter and on our website. So some things that are not as readily known are take-back programs. The best example of that is with the plastic bags and film that can go back to the grocery store. But you can also check with the businesses where you purchase an item to see if they take things back. I know like Office Depot will take printer cartridges. Often your service centers for your car, your automotive centers, will take back used oil, filters, the antifreeze, batteries. And then there's lights and bulbs and lights. I forget what it's called here in Hudson. Anyways, they'll take back the bulbs. Some of the Home Depot will take back certain types of bulbs. So we have retailers that will take back certain items and make things easier for us to keep that out of the landfill. And then you can also check with local auto salvage or service centers about scrap metal. Then there are trade-in programs. So there's an example off on the right there. There's a box that we use in our office. So any cell phone batteries, small electronics, things like that, we purchased the box, I think for like $50. Then when it's filled up, I get on their website, print off a mailing label, and then I ship it all back. So there are a number of different types of those trade-in programs that you can, or pardon me, the mail-in programs that you can do. And then reclaim programs, which are not as common, but it's always worth a call, are directly through the manufacturer. You would call or email them to say, you know, I have your product, which I can no longer use, or maybe I have a lot of packaging. I know businesses tend to get a lot of types of packaging materials, and sometimes the manufacturers will pay to have that sent back to them, and they can recycle and repurpose that. Also, within the county, we want to promote our special event portable recycling bins. So a good example of this is like the county fair. They come and pick up all 40 of these recycling bins, have them all over out at Glenwood, or yes, in Glenwood City. The rental's free. You just have to put a $50 deposit per bin down, and then when they come back clean and in good condition, you get your deposit back. And then I just need to make sure that the understanding is that the organization takes care of the disposal of the recyclables that I don't. Composting is another way to reduce the amount that goes into the landfill. It's fairly easy to do. I have cookbooks available on how to compost, and it's great for your gardens. I'm trying it for my first time this year. And then consumer power. I'm always talking about with residents, just how to make a difference with the businesses that, that you patronize. So you can do that by the choices that you make with your businesses, and also have conversations. I do this by bringing my own takeout containers. Some places where I have activities after work and they aren't recycling, I ask them about their system and, you know, what the hangups are. So anyways, we can impact others and influence them by the way we purchase and our conversations. Another way to be a champion for recycling, and this is one of my favorites, is swap meets. But again, in the current situation, this isn't very realistic, but hopefully soon we'll be able to do this. This can be held with neighbors, church organizations. I do it with my girlfriends a couple times a year. We get together and we just bring things that are still in great condition, but for some reason, I don't want them anymore. You know, women are big on purses or art supplies, jewelry making, things like that. With small kids, you can do it with the games and puzzles and sporting equipment, or you know, household things such as the hardware and tools and paint. Anyways, pick a group of people, pick an evening or an afternoon to get together for a few hours and just swap your treasures. Now, I'm also asking people to think about their recycling not only at home, but in the work environments, and to talk to employers and or, you know, business settings on how to either set up a recycling program or make it a little more robust. Make sure that there's good signage for everyone, so they're educated on proper ways to recycle, and that there are plenty of containers for everyone, and some options such as bringing in your own plates and silverware and things like that, so that there isn't a lot of plastic going into the recycling stream. And then with civic organizations and special interest groups, I just ask that you master the best way to recycle within your organization, set that example with your members, and then be an advocate and influence others. So where does your recycling go? So now that we've talked about the 5 R's and how to keep the recycling stream clean, we know how to recycle right, and we know the right option to choose, we'll talk about where your recycling goes. So the recycling truck comes through your neighborhood and picks up your bin. I just want to make sure that some people have concerns. They said, oh, I saw them put my recycling into the garbage truck, but many of the trucks have dual compartments. So one side is garbage and the other side is recycling. So just trying to confirm with people that that's not actually happening. So these trucks bring it where the semis load it up and bring it to a material recovery facility, which we call MRFs. And at that facility, it is sorted out into, you know, the same types of material: plastics, glass, metals, papers, and cardboard. And then once they're separated, they're baled up just like hay in the picture there. And then those bales are sold to manufacturers that make the new products. So this is a little illustration of how these things are actually separated. It's not just a bunch of people standing in line pulling things apart. That may have been how it started quite a while ago, but it's been automated since then and has really changed quite a bit. So in the upper right-hand corner are these screens or these big wheels that skim off the cardboard, and then the agitators blow off the mixed papers. They're the lightest things. So then those get separated out. The conveyor belt continues and magnets pull off the metals, and then it goes further down the conveyor belt, and there's an electric eddy that gets the aluminum cans. And then then you have your glass and your plastics left, and there are scanners that can divert the different types of plastics. And then the glass is the heaviest, and that is the final item that comes off of the conveyor belts. There are people there that are trying to remove the garbage. That's the main reason to have the humans in there. And they are also coming up with robotic type systems for this. Some examples of what the recyclables have become. Obviously, the metals become more cans and the glass becomes more glass and whatnot. But some interesting things with the plastic, especially the clear, it's made into a lot of different things. It can be sleeping bags, clothing, carpet, things like that. The heavier plastics become lumber and outdoor furniture, fencing, recycling bins. Asphalt can be made from roof shingles or tires. The metal cans can become car or bike parts, appliances, sporting goods. The glass can become insulation, tiles, house bricks, and paper and cardboard go back to what they had been. And right now the paper and cardboard are in highest demand, obviously, because there's so many people having shopping online, having things sent to home. So that's the end of my presentation. I just have some resources here for you. Feel free to contact me at my phone number or email. I'm working from home, but am available 5 days a week. We also have an A to Z recycling and disposal guide, which is on our website, and that answers a lot of very general questions on what to do with recycling. We have a Facebook page, which tends to talk a little more about events and just current topics. And then if you would like to share this same information that I shared with you, there's a YouTube video, which is an interview that was done with River Channel a month or so ago. So those are some options for people if you need a little refresher or if you have any questions. So does anyone have any questions for me?
What are we supposed to do with the AA and AAA batteries?
That is a great question, because according to the DNR, those single-use batteries are not hazardous and they can be thrown in the garbage.
Wow.
Yeah. It's the rechargeable ones that cause a problem, can cause the fires. Even the single-use ones, I put tape on either end because I've heard about fires at different centers, so I just do that to be safe.
Okay.
But that's what happens with those.
Kris, I have a question about the common items that come out of an office. So in our office, we have a box that's just basically for paper to be shredded, and then we have a box for paper not to be shredded. Once in a while, there's a paper clip or a staple that falls into the box or isn't removed from the papers going in. What are some of the things outside of the paper that you don't want to see in a recycling center?
I'm outside of the I'm sorry.
That would come from an office.
What types of things in an office can be recycled? Is that what
Right.
you're? Okay. So a lot of light bulbs, make sure that the light bulbs get disposed of properly. Obviously the paper, there can be, depending on the type of office setting or if it's manufacturing or whatnot. I used to work in the bicycle industry and in a distribution center, and we got a lot of the plastic strapping that came around the boxes. And we had a resource where if we gathered all of that up, we could mail that back. There's a mail back program for that. So there's some things that might take a little research or get a little creative with, but if your instinct is telling you that this might be recyclable, it might be worth looking into. There was a lumberyard in Hudson that things came wrapped in these big plastic sheets, and on the plastic sheets, it mentioned, like a mailback or a take back program with the manufacturer. So they called me, I contacted the manufacturer, and they said, yes, we have it, but it's not available in your area. Unfortunately, the Midwest is so far behind, the coast that it's pretty frustrating. Make sure that, your batteries, if you have different types of, I don't know what type of equipment you might have, but any of those larger batteries, those should be recycled.
Printer cartridges.
Thank you. That was the one that was on the tip of my tongue, and I'm like, I just thought of it. Yes, most companies, wherever you are getting your service from, will take them back. If not, I know through the county, we just contact the copier company and they send us shipping labels and we send them back when they're empty. So that's a real good one right there that everyone uses. Some of the electrical equipment or office equipment, you need to make sure it gets recycled properly, and that might have to be through, in Hudson, there's a place called e-cycling, and they take back a lot of electronic type equipment. So anyways, if you come across anything, that's why I'm here. If you have anything specific that you want me to help figure out, I will see what I can find for us in our county.
Kris, I had a question on the packing. We're getting all these Amazon shipments, and some of them come in these plastic envelopes, and some come in a paper envelope, but it's got funny white padding inside. Do you know about those?
I do. Unfortunately, that's a combination of materials. So if those materials were separated, that bubble wrap and the paper, if they were separated, they could be recycled. But since they've been combined into one envelope, they are no longer recyclable.
Kris, I have a quick question regarding shredding paper. I was told that any shredded paper goes into the garbage, not recycle.
Well, I've checked with, at least with the big haulers, and there's a way to do that. So the small shreds just get lost in everything else. There's no way for them to actually, retrieve that out of mounds of recycling. So the way to do that is to take a paper bag, put your shredded material in there, staple or tape it shut, and then write on there recycled paper. Then that's one unit, and they can divert that.
So in a paper bag, it's okay to put shredded paper.
Okay, cool.
But not a plastic bag, obviously.
Not a plastic bag. Good call.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions for Kris today from anyone? Otherwise, Kris, thank you very much. You're informative and always good to get an update again on this. As we, like you say, we have room to get better. So
yeah.
Otherwise, if anyone has anything else, speak up. Otherwise, thank you all for joining in today, and we will see you back here next week, same time, same place, same channel.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time.
Yep.
Thanks. Have a
Kris.
great week.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.